Okay, so you know how much we love a good deep dive? And this one, well, let me just say this might be one of the more unique sources we've had in a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a puzzle, isn't it?
That's one way to put it, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a potential legal case, maybe even a conviction, and someone wants to make a podcast about it.
And then there's the fact that Diddy is somehow involved.
Yeah, that's
Definitely not your typical entertainment news story.
No, not at all. This feels different. Like there's something else going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. It's all about controlling the narrative.
Right. Okay, so let's break this down. First up, we've got this snippet of text that says, texto calado.
Which, if you don't speak Portuguese, translates to pasted text.
Pasted text.
Yeah.
Why even include that detail?
Well, it kind of makes you wonder if this is even the original source of information.
Oh, you mean like someone copied and pasted instructions from somewhere else?
Exactly, and that just raises more questions.
Like, what's the original context? And why are we only seeing this snippet? Precisely. And then it gets even weirder because the text instructs someone to create a podcast about this whole thing.
Wait, hold on. It's like we're analyzing the very request that might have led to a podcast about this Diddy situation.
Yeah, a podcast within a podcast. It's meta, isn't it?
Super meta. Okay, so the request is for a 15-minute podcast in English,
For a channel called Love in Ancient Time.
hosted by Roberto Silva and Josie Lima.
And they specifically ask for likes and subscriptions too, which is pretty standard for, content creators trying to build an audience.
Right, trying to get that algorithm working for them.
But what's really missing here is any specific detail about Diddy or this conviction they mentioned. What kind of video are we talking about?
Yeah, what was the alleged crime? How does Diddy even fit into all of this?
It just feels like a big puzzle with some of the pieces missing.
I know, right? Okay, so just for a second, let's step back and assume that, you brought us this material, so you obviously know something about this whole Diddy thing. But for our listeners who are just tuning in, what are we even talking about here? This source mentions a video and a conviction, but we need some context.
Yeah, we're definitely missing some pretty crucial pieces of the puzzle here.
Like, what kind of video was it? What was the alleged crime? How is Diddy involved?
We know someone wants this story out there. They want this podcast made, but what is the story?
And why the push for likes and subscriptions is like they're not just trying to share information. They want this to go viral.
Yeah, it's about reaching a large audience, maybe even shaping public opinion.
Which makes me think, who is behind this?
It's interesting, right? Because the request itself is written in Portuguese.
But they want the podcast to be in English.
That's the part that really gets me. Why? Could this be a clue about who made this request?
Or are they just trying to reach a wider, more global audience?
Honestly, it could be both.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Absolutely.
So let's bring this back to you, our listener. Imagine for a second that you're the one who found this source material.
A little snippet of pasted text instructions for a podcast.
A vague reference to Diddy and a conviction. What would you do? Where would you even begin to unravel this?
It really highlights the challenges we all face navigating information, especially in the digital age.
Seriously, we started with just a few lines of text, and now we're talking about legal cases and digital communication and the power of storytelling.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, it does.
I mean, how do you even begin to approach information like this when it lacks so much context, especially online where things can spread so quickly?
Right. How can we be more critical of the content we consume and not just get swept up in whatever narrative is being presented to us? It's definitely something to keep in mind as you continue exploring this whole Diddy situation.
That's a really good point, because this isn't just about Diddy. It's about how we approach information in general and the need to be discerning consumers of content.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Especially when there are potentially legal implications at play.
Exactly. We've got to be careful out there. Well, folks, that's another deep dive in the books.
Until next time.
Stay curious.